This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV Profit.
Hello and welcome to Profit this week. What an action-packed week it has been for us this week. Will they be bailed out by the Congress or won't they? As the US auto giants battled uncertainty, US Congress rejected a $15 billion plan this week. Renewed efforts are now being made to breathe life into the auto majors. Indian vendors of these auto companies are sure to be hit if the revival package does not go through, and they are clearly a worried lot.
On this vote, the yeas are 52, the nays are 35. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
That was the moment that the US auto industry was looking forward to. And it ended in a huge disappointment. The bailout plan finally could not make it past the Congress, since the most important demand from the Republicans was not met, which would have forced the United Auto Workers Union to agree to drastic cuts in compensation and benefits. The White House, vehement in its opposition to the bailout, said, "It's disappointing that the Congress failed to act tonight." US auto companies were seeking a $35 billion bailout package from the Congress. The Congress seemed to clear a partial bailout plan, which included infusing $15 billion. That would have allowed the auto companies to sail through the crisis for the time being. But a deal could not be reached even for the partial bailout. Expectedly, there was a lot of disappointment after the Congress decision.
The blow to the American consciousness and confidence and capability is beyond economic terms, if that occurs. Now, I pray this evening that will not happen.
So how does the road ahead look for the Detroit car makers now? The auto giants could now be faced with a Chapter 11 filing. It now appears that Ford could escape the filing. The other hope for them is for President Bush to provide some interim relief from the $700 billion TARP fund. Alternatively, the Fed could also step in and bail out the auto companies for the short term.
These companies either already failed or failing, and that's a shame. These aren't the General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler I knew. But we all in America will benefit by competition.
Clearly, the fallout of Motown's big three players will have a ripple effect across sectors in India. And with White House backing the auto bailout package, all eyes will now be on the possibility of an agreement on the labour cost front.
As the US auto companies struggled, some Indian companies which are vendors for the auto majors were a worried lot. Indian IT companies, which help in application development and R&D services for the auto giants, could now face the heat. The large Indian IT companies have nearly 8% exposure to the big three auto companies, but KPIT Cummins has a larger exposure to the sector.
This would definitely potentially could have an impact on auto industry, but I do not think this is the end of road for the auto companies. As a company, we have less than 5% exposure to auto sector in US. So I think it would have an impact in terms of a growth prospect for the next year.
Analysts also fear that the worst apprehensions of the IT companies, already hit by the slowdown in the financial services industry, could come true.
It compounds problems for the Indian automakers who are already in some of a tight spot. What typically any industry looks at is the sustainability of its vendors and its suppliers. Now they've had problems on the front end, now that they have to deal problems on the back end as well now, is because it becomes tighter for vendors to survive in, especially in thin margins, and when they were looking at export growth, and that's going to get curtailed. So yes, all in all, it compounds things, and it's going to take some more time before a revival sets in the entire space.
It's not just the tech companies which are shivering. For auto component manufacturers, some of whom export their products to GM, Ford and Chrysler, it could lead to another set of problems. Forging company Bharat Forge, components manufacturer Rico Auto and Sundaram Fasteners account for over 3% of GM's output, while the big three auto companies help with nearly 5% of revenues for these companies. All eyes are now on how the automakers work quickly on the alternatives so that they can prevent a bankruptcy filing. With Siddharth Vinayak Patankar and Sheetal Bansal, Haris Usman for NDTV.
That's all the time we have on Profit this week, but as usual, we'll be watching out for all the important developments next week, and the next week promises to be a very important one.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV Profit.